Frankie, I'm so excited about this for many reasons. I'm going to start with this. Approximately about 2 years ago, you interviewed me. And before then, and after the time that you interviewed me, I've been following your work. You are one of the best, I'm not sure if I can call you podcasters, or your podcast is on another level. You have interviewed, correct me if I'm wrong, over 160 people. And I'm very grateful I'm one of them. Now, many people start a podcast. They'll interview 5 people, 10, 15, energy starts dropping. And most people give up. You've been persistent enough to interview people from Australia, Dubai, all over Europe. You just came from US, and you're so dedicated to pass the message to people, to anybody that is watching, that, hey, you can start something from somewhere and build something which is really inspiring and motivating. So I thought to myself, you know what? Let's turn the tables. I want to interview Frankie for many reasons. One, love how persistent you are, because you still got your existing business, which we're going to get into in a minute as well. And you're building your podcast, but you're committed doing it. And not just that, you also learning a lot yourself, because I've interviewed now myself over, I think, about 100 people. And I get excited every time I interview somebody, because every person I speak to, I can learn something. And you have learned stuff from 160 plus people. This is exciting for me. So welcome, Frankie.
It's beautiful to see this come full circle. And like you mentioned, I suppose 165 reps is what I've got on the board out in the public domain, but obviously probably done about similar to you, probably talked to 200 plus entrepreneurs.
Yes.
So it's been a phenomenal journey. It's been phenomenal. So I'm so excited to be here, and hopefully I can add some value to you guys.
100%. Why didn't you give up?
So it's funny you mentioned the word why, because that is the most important word that we start this podcast with. I think a lot of people go out to the marketplace and they say, okay, what is trending right now? Okay, it might be e-commerce, and it might be drop shipping. It might be, let's become a real estate agent in your industry. It might be, let's start a podcast, rather than saying, okay, what is my why for my total life? Like, what am I here to do? Like, that's what I figured out before I even started a podcast, because it's important that you understand why and who the fuck you are before you start trying to put it together with a medium of expressing it. So, because if you cannot understand why you do it and why you're even starting in the first place, how can you connect it with the medium? So the mediums that we have in the world right now to exchange ideas are writing, obviously speaking, podcasting, obviously with voice, with verbal. We have these mediums to articulate our ideas. And it's important that we understand before we even do that, how, are we even good at speaking? Are we a writer? You wouldn't start a Twitter account. You wouldn't start a blog if you weren't a writer, would you? Well, it all starts with going back to that core reason why you started in the first place. For me, I read a book by Simon Sinek quite a number of years ago now, and it's called Start With Why. I'm sure a lot of your audience has read it and kind of digested it, but if you haven't, I urge you to. And what that core book allowed me to do is allow me to establish my why in life. And my why in life is to help people break patterns and flip perspectives so that they can have more clarity, focus, and success. And that why became my core reason to starting the podcast. Now, once I had my why, is in this why statement that means a lot to me, that every time I say it, I felt it, I embodied it. Once I had that, I then said, okay, what medium am I best at articulating? It wasn't writing. It wasn't posting pictures on Instagram. My best medium I felt that I had was voice. So I thought, okay, now I'll start a podcast then, because now I've aligned my why statement with the core understanding of the best way to communicate my why. So once you get those two elements aligned, you now can gain momentum, because even if you said to me at I think we were episode 34, even if you said to me, Frankie, you're shit, I would have just gone off and got better. I would have got better and better and better. And I'd reiterate it, because nothing any negative that anyone says to me could ever dent my why, because my why is an internal concept that I've constructed that fully aligns with me from top to bottom. So that's that. In answer to your question is how I've been relentlessly in the pursuit of this across, why I've podcasted in Portugal, Dubai, the UK, in all across America, in LA and Miami, and all across Australia. The reason why is because I know at the deepest core of my focus that I have this burning desire within me to share this, my why, which is to help people break patterns and flip perspectives in their life, to share that with the world. And when you've got that, you kind of become unstoppable, in your own little way.
In the society where we're living now, most of us, when we want to start any business, excitement is at the next level. Enthusiasm, energy, big goals, big dreams, could be even big whys. We start, and the reality is nothing worthwhile will be easy. It's not going to happen. You're not going to be one of the best podcasters around the world after one episode, or 2, or 5, or 10, or 50. So a lot of people, when they start something, and whatever they thought is going to happen doesn't happen instantly or fast, people seem to be discouraged or give up. And that's why I also say, why didn't give up? Because, we all, or a lot of us, want to have results straight away. You know what I mean? Because we've been messaging each other over the last couple of days. And you said you've been doing this for, correct me if I'm wrong, 4 or 5 years, correct?
For 4 years now.
4 years. 4 years. 4 years persistent like a motherfucker, constantly.
Every day.
Every day.
How do I get better?
Interview after interview, interview after interview. And, you interviewed me and I was challenged in the interview. That's why I loved it, because you were making me think on my feet and, be creative with my answers, because you put me on the spot. And every time you were asking me questions, you were asking those questions with a purpose to make an impact to potentially somebody who's watching. But saying that, 4 years, you didn't give up after first, second, third, fourth. And you said to me, the other day, you got another 6 to go because you gave yourself a 10-year goal. Why do you have interviewed so many people? Question that I have for you, out of everybody that you have interviewed yourself, and including you in that category, what do you think all of us that you have interviewed have in common when it comes to not giving up? And you're in that bucket as well.
Everyone has a deep understanding of what they're about and what they're moving away from and what they're moving to. Let me give you an example using you. So we did an interview, right? And obviously you're talking about me challenging you. Let me just clarify this, right? When I'm challenging someone like you on a podcast, there's a reason I'm doing that. One, I want you, as in the guest, to leave better that day and to challenge what you thought was possible in your own mind. 2, I want the audience to challenge what they think is possible in their mind. And 3, I want there to be wisdom within that people can take away that day and implement, and that 1% can, implemented daily, can improve their life. So that's why I do that. In essence, the commonality is, let's just take it back to you. When I interviewed you, you are constantly in the pursuit of what you term as success and what drives you, because when you were a child and when you experienced life in your earliest of days, you had a burning desire to change the reality that you knew. The reality that you knew at the time was like not poverty, but it was like there was war-torn parts of the country. There was lack of abundance in your life, and you never wanted to experience that ever again in your reality. And you knew that in order for you to achieve that you had to get so far past the point of no return, going back to that. And that's just been your infinitely core desire to provide for your family, to change your position, and then to also change and to give people from, that culture, that Baltic culture, the the belief in themselves to do it for themselves. And that's something that drives you, your core belief. And yeah, you love the Lamborghinis and you love, and you're happy and you do all this and you're out there and you love all that, you do. But the core thing that lights a fire under your ass every day is knowing that you never want to ever go back to right. You remember that story you told me? I remember it explicitly. You driving a little moped, and there was someone that pulled next to you in the car, and they look over to you and they're judging you, and you have that little bit of pain in your early life has driven you to where you are now. And it's the same for every entrepreneur that I've interviewed, and it's the same for me. I was a boxing trainer at world title level. I've represented a world title level. I was one of the youngest to ever do it in British history. But the reason I went on the pursuit of becoming a boxing trainer was because I felt so shit within myself that I wasn't good enough to become a professional. I wasn't good enough to be a professional world champion. I didn't have that ability or that self-belief within myself to do that. So I went in the pursuit of something I thought would mask it, would cover it, and it didn't. So when I aligned my why statement and my purpose with this podcasting mission, I gave myself something that I could align on, that was aligned on. And that's what every entrepreneur does. Every entrepreneur that I've interviewed does. And that's the commonality. It's like, look at Adrian Portelli. Look at what you're doing. Look at Troy Candy. They've all come from different backgrounds, but they've all got the same little fire lit because they have a purpose, a reason for being. They will not be rocked. They will not be told they've got to conform, and I think you've got to find that within yourself. So your audience has to find whatever that spark is, and people demonize their childhoods, for argument's sake. They say, I was abused as a child. It's a bad thing. They become a victim. Some other stuff happens in their childhood. They become a victim. You have a choice and a narrative to direct your life. Everything that's bad that's happened to me in my life, and everything that's bad that's potentially going to happen in the future, I'm going to use every single ounce of it to go, fuck this. I'm going to absolutely send it, because I need to leave myself in a better position and leave my family in a better position. And when you find those, when you lean on those core things and go, hey, this didn't break me, it's going to make me. When you lean on that, when you actually fucking breathe that into your soul, that's when you've got a platform then that you can start to take off from. You can't take off from a platform that doesn't have this belief in themselves. So you need to install that self-belief, and whatever internal conversation has to happen from today for you guys to believe in your truest self, to remove all the bullshit, to remove anything that says, who you're supposed to be, all this crap, parents, like, let's get to it. The simplest way I've found to get to your true self and to plot a path to who you want to be is simply this: get an A4 journal out. One side of the paper says, who's Frankie Lee? The other side says, who's Frankie Lee going to be? Right. And I write down on this side of the paper who I actually am in this moment. Then I write down who I want to be in this alternate reality that I'm mine. And now I look at the gap. And I know instantly what the gap that has to be closed, because if I've been radically honest with myself, if I've expressed who the fuck I am, no one else is going to see this. So it doesn't matter. It's just between me and the paper. If I express everything about who I am on this side of this paper, and then I express everything I want to be on this side of this paper, and I look at the gap in between, I can now close the gap.
Which is interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? But the problem is, and I take it back to you. The reason you closed the gap in your life between where you are and where you are now was because, one, you had a burning desire. Yeah. You talk to me many times about these times when people have looked down on you before. You've talked many times to me about these properties that you did up in your early days when you were painting and all this other shit that was going on. Right. But you from where you are now to where you are now, the gap's been closed because you had a fucking vision that would not be denied. The reason that I think you were so strong in that vision is because you've either visioned it, you've documented it, you've had goals, you've had something tangible that
I'll tell you something interesting. When I was, I came to Australia when I was 15 and a half. I'm 44 now. And I think when I was 17 years old, my uncle sent me a letter. There was no fucking internet then, clearly. And every time I was communicating to him, I literally had to write the letter, and anyway, he would write me back. Very, very, very wise man, my uncle is. And he wrote something to me, which is interesting. And he said, you are not who you think you are. You're also not who you want to become. You are what actions you show every day, which is interesting because everything you said, I agree. But end of the day, having big vision, or having understanding where you are today and where you want to be, only way that can be possible is by little actions you're taking every single day to get from where you are now to where you want to get. Is that action?
It's the action, but action without direction is a fool's errand.
100%. 100%.
So what I mean is, if you're radically honest with yourself on this side of the paper, and you say where you are, and you're radically honest with where you're going, the next point of what I was going to say was the fact of, like, now you can present the actions that actually moves the needle in your life, which lead you to the results that you want in your reality.
Step at a time.
It's a step at a time, but you because you knew an external vision, and because I know an external vision of where the podcast wants to go, I can align myself and take the steps. Let me give you an example. When I was number 3 in Australia in education category on Apple and Spotify, I noticed that the 2 above me were American podcasts, right? American podcasts in the Australian chart. And I sat there and I thought to myself, hang on a minute. Well, actually, one was Canadian, one was Jordan Peterson, so one was American. I thought to myself, hang on a minute. I'm a podcaster based in Australia at this moment in time. I cannot, from what I've seen in the analytics, outrank or outmark these ones by staying in Australia. And my question to myself was your goal to become the biggest education podcast in Australia, or was your goal to become the biggest education podcast in the world? And my gut told me I didn't want my gut to tell me this, Emil. I didn't want to. I wanted to stay in Australia, mate. I wanted to stay in Australia, living a good life.
So you've almost lying to yourself from what you really truly believe and want.
I wanted to tell. I wanted every.
I think you were being realistic. I mean, not greedy with your thoughts.
Well, at the start, becoming number 1 in Australia seemed like a huge mountain to climb.
Of course.
But when you're sat there at number 3 and the only 2 outranking you are an American and a Canadian, you're now within sight of seeing it. Now I'm looking at it from an analytical point of view. What's got to happen analytically for me to close that gap? The only way that I could perceive myself actually closing the gap was to leave Australia and to get other guests on. Now, obviously, my chart position drops when you leave Australia. I think I'm still in the top 50,
vision is bigger.
But my vision is like, since that day that I left there, I've been like in the top 5 in the Middle East. I've been at top 3 in the UK. I've been number 7 in Ireland, and I'm starting to break into the American charts where I need to be. But what I'm saying is, I wanted to. My happiest place is Australia. I love Australia, but my mission, because my vision fucking dictates you can't achieve certain things that you have to do in the comfort of your own cocoon. But you have to know what mission you're on and be radically honest with yourself right the way along the whole journey. Otherwise, you're just gonna fail. I'm sure you've experienced that yourself, right?
Question that I have for you: out of interviewing 200 people, what would you say all entrepreneurs have in common?
I would say that they
besides all of us being fucking crazy, including you.
I would say willingness to burn the ships and back themselves on every level of their being.
Yeah.
I'd say that. I'd say that's probably the commonality, because you have to, Emil, right? The amount of money I've spent going around the world, the amount of money I've had to generate from content removal, from removing content, from doing all this other stuff that I do to even fuel this fire that is every week burning me cash, because I know my ultimate vision pays me back tenfold. You know what I mean? On a balance sheet, if you're an accountant or a fucking number cruncher and you're looking at this, you're going, Frankie, you're fucking nuts, mate. You know what I mean? Like, you're running this over here to do this over here. Yeah, I am, because I believe in the vision of where I believe content will go. And I know that I am aligned with a voice that can do what I need to do within this game. And
See,
if you don't
which is your perfect example to any other individual that wants to start something, that, hey, it will not happen overnight. You know, it's not going to happen. You're not going to be top 3 podcaster in Australia or any country within 2 weeks, within 4 shows. And I think when you were starting, I feel like there was not many people doing podcast on the level you were doing it. Now,
yeah.
every person with a freaking iPhone, I'm starting my podcast. I'm starting my podcast. I'm starting my podcast. And you can see that my interview 2 people, 5, 10, 15, they don't exist anymore, because people expect huge results straight away. People expect, hey, I'm doing this interview and I got 600,000 views in the first day. The reality is, first, podcast you might do, there might be 2 people that watched it, and one is you, one is your mother. Do you know what I mean? Or father, or whatever. But with yourself, you've been persistent enough to keep going, to keep perfecting it all the time. So, question that I have for you: anybody that wants to get into this space, podcasting specifically, because it's so, I feel like it's like fucking crypto a couple of years ago when every human was jumping on it. I feel like that's what podcast is today. Everybody is doing podcasts, full stop. What advice do you have for anybody wanting to start a podcast tomorrow?
So before I give you the advice, let me take it back a stage, right? I'm lucky enough to have not only interviewed these top people, but I know a lot of the top podcasters in the game, right? I would like to think I'm on my way to becoming one of the top in the game, but I'm not there yet. I'm in the pursuit.
No, you're already there. You're just being a humble fucker. That's what you are.
No. I'm on the pursuit, and my advice would be this. Knowing these people and being around these people, my advice would be this, right? Why do you even want to start a podcast? Does it even align with your best form of communication, first and foremost? 2, are you going to be able to get up on a rainy Wednesday morning at fucking 4 a.m. in the morning because you want to align your time zone with the XYZ person abroad, set up all the gear, produce your content? Are you going to want to do that? Is that something that is going to light you up as much today as it is 4 or 5 years ago? Second, can you afford, both mentally, physically, emotionally, and financially, can you afford to play this game for a minimum of 5 years, probably 10? Because that's the reality if you want to be good. Because podcasting, to me, communication is an art form. It's an art. You're not telling me that I've not got better at episodes. I've recorded over 200 episodes now, not out in the world, but I have recorded over 200. You're not telling me that I'm not better at 200 than I was at 34. Of course, lots has changed, lots of nuances changed, and they happen at 1% daily. My question will always be why? Why? Because podcasting is such a long game, such a long tail game, and if you're not playing it to be one of the best that's ever fucking been, right? If you're not playing it for that reason,
what's the point?
If you're not, what the fuck is the point in even
100%.
starting a podcast? Because there's so much.
You're definitely right. I think a lot of people in general start things for the wrong reasons. I still, to this day, I have never done anything purely just for the money. Of course, we need it. I need to fucking buy myself water or food and, have a roof above my head. I do understand money is important and it can allow us to live a better life. It can allow us to help others. I get all that. Money is very important. But I always feel like that if people are only doing something for the money, when it gets really fucking tough, when it gets really hard, it's very easy to give up because there's no real reason why they're fucking doing it. If they're so like you are fucking one passionate motherfucker about what you're doing. So with you, I know it's not cheap. Trust me. My two partners, Simon Bede and Chandray, we have backed One Life Club, and money. Every single thing you do, it costs money. This microphone costs money, and the time, and so on. But with you, you just had a long-term vision. You knew it's not going to be overnight success. And I think that's the mistake that a lot of people are making. They want to have it fast. They want to have it successful. They want to be making millions out of the podcast with first 3 months, without realizing, hey, Frankie Lee, he's done over 200 interviews, and he's more passionate now after 200 than he was after the first one. I mean, I've been following you. I got a feeling that every time you're doing an interview or doing a podcast, your motivation is high. Not like, okay, fucking, this is the 200 ones. I'm fucking tired and I don't feel like, because you got to be on your fucking A game. You got to be focused on the content that you're creating. It's not just the person that you're interviewing. So I think, the answer to everything is being passionate about what you want to do to last long time, and not have it's good to have a high expectations, but also it's good to be living in the reality and understand you will not do this overnight.
Let's just break it down as an actionable step for this audience. It's like this, right? If you say you did want to do a podcast, or anything in life, whether you want to be a real estate agent, a podcaster, a insert topic, right? I would suggest going and doing it 10 times and then seeing if when you do it the 11th time, are you more fizzed up after the event than when you started? So for argument's sake, podcasting gives me energy at 200, whereas other people would feel like it's a labor at 200. But that's why you can't beat someone who's truly aligned, right? Over the long term, because they're a relentless motherfucker, and they'll just keep going. They'll keep going, because everyone they do builds on internal belief, builds that internal belief system. And can be played for longer because it gives me energy. Like, I'll get off this podcast and I'll go and speak to 3 or 4 business calls, and I'll go and book 3 more podcasts because I'm juiced up, because I'm doing what I'm aligned with. So I would suggest that any of you, whether it's e-commerce, whether it's this, whether it's that, whatever it is, do it for agree yourself a period of time. Let's just say agree 12 weeks, 3 months. I will do this. So if it's podcasts, I'll do 1 a week for 12 weeks. If it's e-commerce, I will relentlessly pursue this e-commerce store for 12 weeks. If it's, and I will see if I feel more juiced up after 12 weeks than I did at the start. And that tells you internally on your internal compass whether that is aligned with you or not. And if you find, if you work on a 3-month timeline on all these times, and you see what's in alignment with you, you're going to be able to feel out what's right and what's wrong for you. And that's that I feel is the true key, Emil, to finding something that actually works for you. Is you got to be in alignment, mate. If it's not in alignment, it's not going to work.
It might work for a day, but it's not going to last. That's the big difference. Talk of balance. You have existing business, which is, correct me if I'm wrong, removing content online. Correct?
Contentremoval.com. Yeah. I've
contentremoval.com.
Yeah.
One business. Second, you have epic podcasts that I watch all the time. And 3, you don't know where the fuck you're living, because you're in Australia now, you're in Dubai tomorrow, you are in LA day later, you are in freaking Dublin day later. So you are so dedicated to your craft. Very lucky that your business is online as well, so you can move around, but it's still such a huge balance to manage 2 big things that you're working: online business podcast and travel as well. What's the secret
yeah.
to balancing multiple things at the same time?
Well, let me start by explaining like the true cost of that, because there is a massive cost associated
Of
with
course.
that. Like I have personally lost a fucking fortune
Yeah, of course.
in business and content removal, because whilst an eye is on this, your eye cannot fully be on this. So let me give you an example. I've got a business, contentremoval.com, that if it was in one location with an office with 10, 20 staff, could be scaled to 10, 12 million a year, no worries, got all the systems, got all the processes. That can't happen when you're moving around the world. What you've got then is like, you've got the opportunity to earn maybe between half a mil and 1 mil a year from laptop with a small amount of variables in there. That's what you've got. So there's a cost. Because you and I both know, Emil, I've had the office in the Gold Coast with the manager and you know, building up staff in the Gold Coast. I had to let go of all that to be able to pursue this, because I see the podcast as a bigger opportunity for me. So the balance comes is like this, right? I think to myself, when I'm on my deathbed, what do I want to regret?
Which you don't know when that deathbed will come.
I don't know when my death is, right? I'm trying to play all out before that happens, right? I'm trying to keep myself healthy. I'm trying to actually pursue what I want to do. So I thought to myself, right, am I going to regret more not setting up the content removal company to turn over a few mil a month and then sell it for 30 million? Or am I going to regret more not pursuing the podcast, the dream, right? And I believe there can be 30 millions on the back of this podcast in the future as well. If it's done right, if it's executed right, if it goes anywhere even close to what I believe conceptualized in my mind. So it's like, well, the difference is this: on the content removal journey, which I can clearly see too, I'm not happy along that journey because it's boring. It's not, it doesn't light me up. It's all I'm doing it for is this exit number and this monthly number, which is boring to me. But this podcast path is like, it's untrodden ground.
Which is interesting what you just say. What you just say, it's exactly what running any business is. To get to where we want to get, where our goal is and target, we're going to have to do a lot of shit we might not love as much, because you are so passionate about your podcast, making that work, but it's also expensive fucking engine to make it reality. So you also have a side business, which is not a side business, is a fucking real business that you need to keep doing, because that is funding where you really want to get. So it's always that balance.
So I spoke to a VC the other day, and they were talking about what I needed to do in relation to make this a saleable asset. And it's like, you know, content removal on its own, to a lot of companies, the actual domain name is worth 100, 200 grand, just because the SEO value, the website that's out on it, just as a lead generation page is probably worth between 200 and half a mil. You know what I'm saying? But I know exactly what I've got to do whilst I'm remote and figuring out around the world. I know exactly what I've got to do to be able to scale this, to get out for a few mil. Like, it's just like, but how much of my attention gets taken off by doing that to do this, which is a balance that I'm trying to work out. So my advice to all of you is don't travel and try and hold these balls up or think I'm living this exotic life. I'm pursuing a lifetime labor of love here that may or may not pay off. I mean, God willing, it pays off and it sends it off to the races. But like, you know, I could end up at 40, you know, sat there. Emil, I gave it the 10 years, bro, and it didn't work. It didn't work how I wanted it to work. You know what I mean?
But there's something else. You might change one person's life because they were watching a podcast, maybe 1,000, maybe million, maybe 10. But let's say you gave it 10 years. End of the day, I believe in being a good human, right? If you made no money ever and made a difference in 100 people's lives, that's a fucking success. on another level.
Yeah.
Because, you
Yeah.
know, last 48 hours, I decided every Christmas I like to donate and raise money for charity. And this 2 days ago, we decided to raise money for Spotlight Children Foundation, and which less than 48 hours, I raised $40,000. And I myself and Simon donated a lot of money there too. To me, that's been giving me a lot of satisfaction, and that's not making me money. That's costing me money, because I got an entire team of people that are, you know, helping me put it together. And we are having a drive from Gold Coast to Brisbane on the 2nd of December, and I'm gonna have another 20 staff that I have to pay to work there. But also, yes, you know, we all want to be rewarded financially. We all want to, you know, be passionate about things that we are doing. But you also are changing other people's life. That, my friend, money can't buy.
Yeah. I agree with you, and just by reading the
you know how many fucking people, I'll be honest, I've been interviewed a lot of times. I've probably done at least 50 plus interviews, and a lot of great podcasters, a lot of great guys that are doing amazing work like yourself. But the amount of people that came to me and said, I got hundreds of fucking messages saying, hey, I've watched you on Frank Lee's podcast. You know what I mean? You know, so many people, and they're saying, oh my God, you know, I got inspired, I got motivated, it's a life-changing. That's one fucking interview. So many people, imagine 200 interviews. Now that, my friend, if there is a hell or heaven up there, when you get to that gate, I think God might look at all the good things you have done to slide you in there. You know what I mean?
Well, so there's a few things I got to say to that. It's like it's true. Like a lot of podcasts that look like they're successful in the world because they got clips that are doing 500K. They don't have listenership. The podcast that I've built has been built slowly over time and has thousands and thousands of people listening week in, week out, listening to the episode 3 times, this, that, and that's, and it has a real strong core element to it because it's been built from the ground up. Because I don't build my podcast for you to listen to it. I build it so that you can feel it, because if you can feel the content, you can implement it. You can't implement what you can't feel. There's not a part of me that feels that when I speak, I want people to feel what I'm saying, not just listen to it, because that is the difference that makes it able to be implemented in your life. You know, you need that core feeling. What your podcast that you did on mine gave, right, was like an honest account. I took you into some emotional stories of yours that you probably hadn't talked about in as open as you did, right? And created the connection and the feeling. And if people can feel where you've been, they can get there themselves. And I think that's how I want to separate. There's podcasts. I know there's thousands of podcasts. There's podcasts, and then there's art. And I'm trying to create art that you can implement in your life and take you further forward. And yes, I do believe over the fullness of time that the world will pay you back in remuneration to what you should be doing. And I know every time I step on a podcast, this is what I should be doing day in, day out. Every hour God sends me whilst I'm awake, right?
And I can tell you, you're definitely making an impact without a question. I don't think you personally realize how much you are offering with your podcast, not just people you interview. I hope you do, because you offer people value.
I'm just trying to do what I feel that I'm called to do. But I want people to understand the business side of that gets compromised in terms of like, you know, the podcast, it isn't, I haven't monetized it. I've never monetized it. I've had numerous opportunities to monetize it with fucking dumb sponsorships and all that stuff. I've never done it because I know that when the time is right, it'll be monetized in a way that adds value to the audience. Right. So I've had to keep kicking that can down the road. Meanwhile, this can over here, this content removal can, that's a very good can, very good business, can get impacted because it's not doing 10 million revenue, 5 million revenue, because I'm not 100% eye on that, because I know where I'm going. So to go back to your original question, right? How do you balance it? The answer is, I don't care what anyone says to you, you cannot balance business, podcast, and trying to live with no base. You can't balance that. You just have to make the best of what you do. You're always kicking the can down the road. It's not easy. In fact, I'd almost go as far as to say is it's pretty shit. The only time I get lit up is when I'm in the gym or when I'm doing a podcast, right? All this waves in between. I don't enjoy the lack of stability. I'm in Dubai right now. I'll be in England for Christmas. Then I might be in Miami. I've been in Miami, and everyone thinks, oh, you've got a great lifestyle. It's epic. No, every time you change locations, you have to find a gym. You have to find your sauna, your cold plunge. You have to
Not
get your health.
not just tell you got hotel costs, you got fucking flights. Where does it stop?
And people are like, oh, Frankie, this is first world problems. Yes, I understand that's first world problems. I just want you to understand that there's a cost associated. And the reason I'm telling this is because, and this is my point. My point is this. If your name is fucking Steve or Angelica and you're living in Brisbane right now and you think your life is shit, no, be grateful for the fact that you have a base that you can build off, right? A base, you can build a very tall building in one area off a very strong base. It's very hard to keep other buildings stable whilst your floor's doing this. So that's what I'm saying. So I'm at the point in my life right now, Emil, and I'll be openly honest with it, where I'm thinking, okay, where do I base myself? Because I need the base too. Because in order for me to break the next limits on my podcast, it's simply this. What do I need? I need a base in one location that can provide me with a constant supply of guests in one location, which can also allow me to build a studio and an aesthetic that I can feed into, which will allow me to grow because now everything's conformed both on brand, colors, and everything else. Because that's the kind of level that I believe I'm at now, where I need that. Right. And if I look at where I am compared to where other people are that I believe are no better than me, what have they got? They've got stability, they've got grounding, they've got studio, they've got that. So I'm just in the stage of my life now where I'm pivoting back to needing a base. Whereas some people might look at my life and say, hey, this is great. I'm saying
if I'm greedy, I would say come back to fucking Gold Coast to Brisbane, so we are close to you. But
there's no secret in my mind. I'm telling you now, right? Lived in Dubai, lived in the Gold Coast, lived in Miami, lived in LA, lived in the UK. Telling you now, flat out, that if you live in Australia, you are part of what I term as the lucky sperm club, right? Yeah. whether you were born there as a natural, or whether you've got an Australian passport, or if you've even got residence, go outside right now, look at your view. You're in the best the only Western country in the world that's worth living in right now. The only Western country in the world, like in terms of the first world countries I'm talking about. The only first world country that is actually worth living in is Gold Coast. Second to that is second to those places, in my opinion, are either Dubai, or if you want to live in America, it would have to be Miami. Other than that, I don't. Or if you want to live in the UK, it has to be London. But I'm just saying, like,
I completely agree. I have traveled. I wasn't born in Australia. I'm like you. I was born elsewhere, because you were not born in Australia either. I was born in Europe, and I have traveled entire Europe. I've traveled everywhere, US, and I tell you one thing, very grateful that Australia is my base, what you would call it. And I think it's a definitely amazing country with a lot of opportunities. But then again, everything depends, what we are trying to do as well. Because in your business, if you want to go massive globally, yes, you can do, a lot of interviews and a lot of podcasts over line like this. But end of the day, if 50 Cent or somebody wants to be interviewed, you're on the flight flying there. Do you know what I mean? So there's no, it'll be very hard for you to ever settle down.
And this is what I want people to understand. There's a cost to pursuing dreams, and the cost for pursuing this dream for me has been, I don't get to be in the country that I want to live in right now.
It's almost impossible for you to have a partner You know, how the hell do you have a normal partner and kids when you don't know which country you're waking up the next day? So there's a price to pay everything we all want to do.
How do you offer stability to a woman when you don't even know where you live? How do you do this? You know what I'm saying? There's so many costs that people don't understand. But I believe I'm at 35 right now. I believe that by 40, I'll know the answer to whether it was all worth it. And irrespective of whether I personally believe that I've got to the level I should have got to at 40,
it will 100% be worth it. There's no other fucking choice.
But irrespective of my own critical opinion of myself of whether it is or not, I'll know one thing. I know from the day I started to the day now that thousands and thousands of messages have come through, paragraphs long on Instagram, and to my guests saying that their life has changed infinitely from listening to this.
Well, I can tell you that is the fact, because I'm telling you, I was your guest and people were sending me messages saying, hey, I watched you, I found about you on Frank Lee's podcast. You know, you changed my life because they seen you there. Few questions for you. What does never give up mean to Frankie?
Never give up. It means it means that there's a deep burning fire within myself that I know that I have more to give. I have more left in the tank. It's just a deep burning desire within myself to be the best version of myself that I can be. That's what never give up represents to me in every element of life, whether that's 12 rounds on the bag in the boxing gym, whether that's going for a run. It's like, whether that's doing this podcast, leave everything. When I get off this podcast, I'm going to know that I've left everything and I've tried to give as much energy through this camera as I possibly can. And I'd like to believe in my mind that, there's never been as much energy put through the fucking camera as what I'm trying to put through. So that's how I approach everything. And that's what never give up means to me.
If you got one day to live, what is one message you would pass to every other human about life? What is one message you would say to people? I'm dying tomorrow. And any 20 years old or 18 years old, should I say, he's got a life in front of him. What is the message?
Take this moment right now to be radically honest with who you are and who you want to be. And then for the next 24 hours, be that.
Frankie, you better bring your fucking ass back to us so we can have lunch together.
Yeah, we'll do it. We'll do it. And do you know what? If I'd stayed just doing content removal, I could have had a garage full of cars like that. but this is why you should listen to Emil, kids, because like I'm telling you now, right? He's got the cars. I've not got the car. I've got a white wall behind me in Dubai, right? So
yeah, but you know what? A life journey is not a quick sprint. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Where you are going, besides changing many other people's lives, where you are going, I tell you, you have way more cars than I have at the moment when you get to my age. I'm 9 years behind. I'm 9 years older than you, and you're definitely on a bloody epic path. And that's why I was excited to actually have you on this side of the table, because I know you got so much to offer, not just by interviewing others, but actually you offering good life experience to others as well, so people can really get a lot from you too. So I can not thank you enough for being part of this.
I appreciate your time, and I hope you guys not only got value but implement. When you're looking for Emil's interviews, I hope you implement these things that he's telling you, because it's the implementation that's going to take you towards everything that you so desire. So remember, don't just watch One Life Club. Don't just consume Emil's content. Don't just listen to this and not implement something. I mean, if you can take away one thing from this podcast, just take the journal thing away. Who you are, who you want to be, write it down. See the gap in between. Sounds simple, sounds woo-woo, but it'll give you some clarity in your life that you've not had before this day. And that is the 1% move that I'm talking about. I hope this adds value, and much love.
Thank you.